Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl, illustrated by Quentin Blake. Chapter 11. A Surprise for Mrs. Fox. The small fox ran back along the tunnel as fast as he could, carrying the 3 plump hens. He was exploding with joy. Just wait, he kept thinking. Just wait until Mummy sees these. He had a long way to run, but he never stopped once on the way. And he came bursting in upon Mrs. Fox. "Mummy," he cried, out of breath. "Look, Mummy, look! Wake up and see what I have brought you." Mrs. Fox, who was weaker than ever now from lack of food, opened one eye and looked at the hens. "I'm dreaming," she murmured, and closed the eye again. "You're not dreaming, Mummy. They're real chickens. We're saved. We're not going to starve." Mrs. Fox opened both eyes and sat up quickly. "But, my dear child," she cried, "where on earth—" "Bogus's chicken house, number 1, spluttered the small fox. "We tunnelled right up under the floor, and you've never seen so many big, fat hens in all your life. And Dad said to prepare a feast. They'll be back soon." The sight of food seemed to give new strength to Mrs. Fox. "A feast it shall be," she said, standing up. "Oh, what a fantastic fox your father is. Hurry up, child, and start plucking those chickens." Far away down in the tunnel, the fantastic Mr. Fox was saying, "Now for the next bit, my darlings. This one will be as easy as pie. All we have to do is dig another little tunnel from here to there." "To where, Dad?" "Don't ask so many questions. Start digging." Chapter 12. Badger. Mr. Fox and the 3 remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel tired or hungry. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and the fact that it was none other than bogus chickens they were going to eat made them chorgle with laughter every time they thought of it. It was lovely to realize that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them their dinner without knowing it. "Keep digging," said Mr. Fox. "It's not much further." All of a sudden a deep voice above their heads said, "Who goes there?" The foxes jumped. They looked up quickly, and they saw peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel a long, black, pointed, furry face. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me! I'm glad I've found someone at last. I've been digging around in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am." Badger made a hole in the ceiling bigger and dropped down beside the foxes. A small badger, his son, dropped down after him. "Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill?" Badger said excitedly. "It's chaos. Half the wood has disappeared, and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who is we?" asked Mr. Fox. "All us diggers. That's me and Mole and Rabbit and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, is right now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children and he smiled. The children smiled back at him, sharing his secret. "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in is all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously, "and the farmers are not going to give up until they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." Badger sat down and put a paw around his small son. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife up there is so weak she can't dig another yard." "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox, "and yet at this very minute she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me. I can't stand it." "It's true," cried the small foxes. "Dad's not teasing. We've got chickens galore." "And because everything is entirely my fault," said Mr. Fox, "I'm inviting you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go around, I can assure you." "You mean it?" cried Badger. "You really mean it?" Mr. Fox pushed his face close to Badger's and whispered darkly, "Do you know where we've just been?" "Where?" "Right inside Bogus Chicken House number 1. "No!" "Yes, but that is nothing to where we are going now, and you have come just at the right moment, my dear Badger. You can help us dig, and in the meantime your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news." Mr. Fox turned to the small Badger and said, "Tell them they are invited to a fox's feast. Then bring them all down here and follow this tunnel back until you find my home." "Yes, Mr. Fox," said the small Badger. "Yes, sir, right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir. And he scrambled quickly back through the hole in the roof of the tunnel and disappeared. Chapter 13. Bunce's Giant Storehouse. "My dear Foxy," cried Badger, "what in the world has happened to your tail?" "Don't talk about it, please," said Mr. Fox. "It's a painful subject." They were digging the new tunnel. They dug on in silence. Badger was a great digger, and the tunnel went forward at a terrific pace now that he was lending a paw. Soon they were all crouching underneath yet another wooden floor. Mr. Fox grinned slyly, showing sharp white teeth. "If I'm not mistaken, my dear Badger," he said, "we are now underneath the farm which belongs to that nasty little pot-bellied dwarf Bunce. We are, in fact, directly underneath the most interesting part of that farm. Ducks and geese!" cried the small foxes, licking their lips. "Juicy, tender ducks and big, fat geese." "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "But how in the world can you know where we are?" asked Badger. Mr. Fox grinned again, showing even more white teeth. "Look," he said, "I know my way around these farms blindfolded. For me it's just as easy below ground as it is above it." He reached high and pushed up one wooden floorboard, then another. He poked his head through the gap. "Yes," he shouted, jumping up into the room above, "I've done it again. I've hit it smack on the nose, right in the bull's-eye. Come and look." Quickly Badger and 3 small foxes scrambled up after him. They stopped and stared. They stood and gaped. They were so overwhelmed they couldn't speak, for what they now saw was a kind of fox's dream, a badger's dream, a paradise for hungry animals. "This, my dear old Badger," proclaimed Mr. Fox, "is Bunce's mighty storehouse. All his finest stuff is stored in here before he sends it off to market. Against all the 4 walls of the great room, stacked in cupboards and piled upon shelves reaching from floor to ceiling, were thousands and thousands of the finest, fattest ducks and geese, plucked and ready for roasting. And up above, dangling from the rafters, there must have been at least 100 smoked hams and 50 sides of bacon. Just feast your eyes on that," cried Mr. Fox, dancing up and down. "What do you think of it, huh? Pretty good grub." Suddenly, as though springs had been released in their legs, the 3 hungry small foxes and the ravenous hungry Badger sprung forward to grab the luscious food. "Stop!" ordered Mr. Fox. "This is my party, so I shall do the choosing." The others fell back, licking their chops. Mr. Fox began prowling around the storehouse, examining the glorious display with an expert eye. A thread of saliva slid down one side of his jaw and hung suspended in mid-air, then snapped. "We mustn't overdo it," he said. "Mustn't give the game away. Mustn't let them know what we've been up to. We must be neat and tidy and just take a few of the choicest morsels. So to start with, we shall have 4 plump young ducks." He took them from the shelf. Oh, how lovely and fat they are. No wonder Bunce gets a special prize for them in the market. "All right, Badger, lend me a hand and get them down. You children can help as well. Here you go. Goodness me, look at your mouths are watering. And now I think we had better have a few geese. 3 will be quite enough. We'll take the biggest. Oh my, you've never seen finer geese than these in the king's kitchen. Gently does it. That's the way. And what about a couple of nice smoked hams? I adore smoked ham, don't you, Badger? Fetch me that step ladder, will you please?" Mr. Fox climbed up the ladder and handed down 3 magnificent hams. "And do you like bacon, Badger?" "I'm mad about bacon," cried Badger, dancing with excitement. "Let's have a side of bacon, that big one up there." "And carrots, Dad," said the smallest of the 3 small foxes. "We must take some of those carrots." "Don't be a twerp," said Mr. Fox. "You know we never eat things like that." "It's not for us, Dad. It's for the rabbits. They only eat vegetables." "My goodness, you're right," cried Mr. Fox. "What a thoughtful little fellow you are. Take 10 bunches of carrots." Soon all this lovely loot was lying in a neat heap upon the floor. The small foxes crouched close, their nose twitching, their eyes shining like stars. "And now," said Mr. Fox, "we shall have to borrow from our friend Bunce 2 of those useful push carts over in the corner." He and Badger fetched the push carts, and the ducks and geese and hams and bacon were loaded onto them. Quickly the push carts were lowered through the hole in the floor. The animals slid down after them. Back in the tunnel, Mr. Fox again pulled the floorboards very carefully into place so that no one could see they had been moved. "My darlings," he said, pointing to 2 of the 3 small foxes, "take a cart each and run back as fast as you can to your mother. Give her my love and tell her we are having guests for dinner. The badgers, the moles, the rabbits and the weasels. Tell her it must be a truly big feast, and tell her the rest of us will be home as soon as we're done one more little job." "Yes, Dad, right away, Dad," they answered, and they grabbed the trolley each and went rushing off down the tunnel. Badger Has Doubts. Chapter 14. "Just one more visit," cried Mr. Fox, "and I'll bet I'll know where that'll be," said the only small fox now left. He was the smallest fox of them all. "Where?" asked Badger. "Well," said the smallest fox, "we've been to Boggers, and we've been to Bunce, but we haven't been to Bean. It must be Bean." "You are right," said Mr. Fox, "but what you don't know is which part of Mr. Bean's place we are about to visit." "Which?" they said both together. "Ah," said Mr. Fox, "just you wait and see." They were digging as they talked. The tunnel was going forward fast. Suddenly Badger said, "Doesn't this worry you just a tiny bit, Foxy?" "Worry me?" said Mr. Fox. "What?" "All this stealing." Mr. Fox stopped digging and stared at Badger as though he had gone completely dotty. "My dear old furry frump," he said, "do you know anyone in the whole world who wouldn't swap a few chickens if his children were starving to death?" There was a short silence while Badger thought deeply about this. "You are far too respectable," said Mr. Fox. "There's nothing wrong with being respectable," Badger said. "Look," said Mr. Fox, Boggis and Bunce and Bean are out to kill us. You realise that, I hope." "I do, Foxy, I do indeed," said the gentle Badger. "But we're not going to stoop to their level. We don't want to kill them." "I should hope not, indeed," said Badger. "We wouldn't dream of it," said Mr. Fox. "We shall simply take a little food here and there to keep us and our families alive, right?" "I suppose we'll have to," said Badger. "If they want to be horrible, let them," said Mr. Fox. "We're down here are decent, peace-loving people." Badger laid his head on one side and smiled at Mr. Fox. "Foxy," he said, "I love you." "Thank you," said Mr. Fox. "Now let's get on with the digging." 5 minutes later, Badger's front paws hit against something flat and hard. "What on earth is this?" he said. "It looks like a solid stone wall." He and Mr. Fox scraped away the soil. It was a wall, but it was built of bricks, not stone. The wall was right in front of them, blocking their way. Now, who in the world would build a wall under the ground? "Very simple," said Mr. Fox. "It's the wall of an underground room, and if I'm not mistaken, it is exactly what I'm looking for."